welcome to a new series and a new season, of course, of the South in Preview, and of course, in association with Square Media and Repos Retail Solutions. And of course, joining me as ever, very, very good friend of mine, and of course, everybody, good friend of everybody else in the Summer League media manager, of course, the legend that is Mr. Steve Whitney. And Steve, and interesting summer, I suppose, for for football. I mean, it's been a lot of ins and outs and turns and people moving to different places and so forth and so forth. You must have been quite busy with all that, especially with all the problems with the registrations as well.
Well, that's been an absolute nightmare, David. There's been a problem at the FA. I don't know the ins and outs of it completely, but the registrations involving step 4 and above have only, well, in fact, I don't think they've actually been totally solved now, but it's been a nightmare trying to keep up to date with signings, and it's only courtesy of our friend Twitter and things like that that's helped us out this year.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting, though. I mean, it's it's with the actual divisions coming up, this season. But I mean, let's start then, with where you think things are going to lie and not lie as such in the Central Division.
Yeah, Premier Division Central. Of course, it started actually last Saturday with the first league games, and last year, of course, Banbury United ran away with it last season. So, and with the outstanding Peterborough sports side also going up, this season looks like it could be a tighter affair. Colville Town, Russell Olympic and Alvechurch finished in the other playoff places in 2021-22, and I would have thought they would expect to be up there challenging again this season. Alvechurch won their first game on Saturday, 3-0, beat Starbridge, their neighbours, 3-0, which was a good result. Colville, they won 3-0 as well against Russell, so that was another excellent result for them. And Adam Stevens' Colville side made some decent signings too, especially experienced goalkeeper Paul White, who numbers Kettering Town amongst one of his previous clubs, and forward Ashley Chambers, who helped Buxton win the Northern Premier League title last season. Looks like being a tougher season for AFC Risen and Diamonds, though, with Andy Burgess now in permanent control after taking over as interim boss when Andy Peaks left for Tamworth. They've not made signings that particularly have enamoured many Diamonds fans, judging from the local press where I live. But a goalless draw at home to Needham Market didn't exactly enthuse matters either. But we'll see how they go. As far as Andy, sorry,
much. I mean, have you noticed though as well? Something that I have as well is that you look at some of the new signings from some of these teams in the division, and they seem to be a lot of people going to Sweden to pick a few people up as well.
Yeah,
a lot of people, or maybe players that have been out in Sweden that have now come back into into this sort of level of football from Sweden. But there seem to be a lot of them picking up a few players from Sweden.
Yeah, I think that. Well, it's been going on for a long time, but I think in latter years, a lot of pro clubs have been sending young players out to Sweden and Norway, Finland, and those sort of countries to get experience of a different climate, a different situation from sending them out on loan to either Championship, First Division clubs or League One clubs or lower down the pyramid, and it gives them a wider experience of wider life experience. But yeah, I agree that there has been a lot. And that goes for like the Eastman League and the Northern Premier Leagues as well. They've had a few. I quite fancy Andy Peaks' Tamworth side. I think this season they had a fantastic run when he took over, and he's took a couple of his old stalwarts from Diamonds with him, Liam Dolman, who he had for quite some time with him at Hayden Road, and Alex Collard. They've made the move up to the Lamb, But the bookies, they fancy Ilkeston Town, who got promoted from the Northern and then switched from the Northern Premier League. They've actually been installed as the bookmakers' favourites. Slightly surprising. But how do we fancy Bedford Town? I mean, we had a good chat to Gary Setcher, didn't we?
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. I was just looking at that. Stratford Town. They waited them at the weekend, 1-1 draw. So that was one. The other one that sort of took my mind, looking at it as well, was possibly the likes of Royston down there with Steve Castle, somebody else, of course, that we've spoken to as well. But that they were another side that I looked at, and I think one of the ones that when I asked Anthony what he thought was the ones that he was a little bit surprised at was the one you mentioned earlier on, which was Alvechurch beating Stourbridge 3-0. So he thought that was a bit of an interesting result as well. But it's certainly going to be. Teams that I recognise when you start, from Isthmian, when we was part of the Isthmian stuff, and you see, as you say, need a market of 0-0 draw against the Diamonds. You see, Leiston, or however you want to say it, beating Nuneaton Bath 3-2. So there's a few in there, but I think Bedford Town could go quite well in that division. It's not a bad result to start off with at Stratford Town. To start.
No, the only downside to, we'll see how it goes, but he's lost Rene Howe, who scored a lot of goals for him last season. He's dropped down a level, and he's stayed at the level that he was playing at before. He's gone to where?
He's got the Paul Halsey. He has, yeah. Paul Halsey was extremely excited about that.
I expect he was, yeah. I think there's a few clubs queuing up to sign him. But Gary Setcher signed a lad called Tyrone Luthwaite from Aylesbury United. Now he's got a good reputation. A lot of people like him. So it'll be interesting to see how they go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you say Ilkeston put in as 5-2 favourites for the title, so let's put the curse on them straight away.
Yeah, Mickleover will be an interesting one as well. They've got a good young manager in John McGrath, and they've got a really, really good academy structure behind them, and they do tend to bring their lads through. So, be interesting to see how they go.
A good chairman there, if I remember right. I'm sure I've spoken to chairman on our Monday show, and I think he was the ex-chairman or director or something of Derby County at one stage as well. Yeah. So they've got somebody there with great experience at the helm of the club as well. So that'll be very interesting.
Yeah, they got that Basford United as well have been switched with Mickleover from the Northern Premier. So, be an interesting season. But I think I still tip Tamworth. I think they'll be there or thereabouts. But of course, I've got to be neutral.
So, I mean, in the South Division, last season we saw A's and Yedding finish runners-up to Taunton. Although they, Paul Hughes' side were beaten in the playoffs by Farnborough, would you have them as your out and out favourites maybe in the South?
Well, the bookies certainly think so. They've got them down as favourites. He's lost Francis Amati, who did well for him last season, scored a lot of goals, but the bonus for him was keeping hold of top scorer Moses Emmanuel. There were a lot of clubs from the National League South, especially. Tapping him up, and he's added a few decent new lads to his side as well. So, it would be hard to look away too far from them. But they didn't start very well. Lost to Met Police on Saturday.
Probably the shock result for me of the weekend, I thought.
Well, yeah, although they did well, Met Police last season, and Gary McPherson's always got a very, very competitive team down there. So not 100% surprising, but it was. That I think Hayes and Eddie will be there or thereabouts because of their power up front. I think they've got a lot of goal scorers around their squad. The bookers also fancy Bracknell Town, who've come up.
Yeah, and that was the one I was saying. I was looking at the league, and I thought they were the red herring in there. I must admit they were outstanding in the in Eastern League South Central for a few years. Do you know what I mean? And they were always up there with Bobby Wilkinson, who's a lovely guy, and they were always up around that sort of one, first and second place. I know they lost to Cheshunt in a playoff final when Cheshunt got promoted into the Premiership and Prem and stuff like when, no disrespect, no one saw Cheshunt beating Bracknell and it happened. But so for me, I think, I know there's a few others in there as well, but I think they're going to definitely be up there.
Yeah, and Bobby Wilkinson's managed to hold on to most of his title-winning squad. And I mean, to be honest, they waltzed that division, didn't they, last year? And it'll be interesting actually to see how Hanwell do, because I mean they finished playoff winners, didn't they, in that division? But they were quite a way behind Bracknell in terms of the points. So it'd be interesting to see how they do.
But they've got one of the best pitches in non-league down at Hanwell Town.
Is it really? Yeah, I've not been.
It's like a carpet. It is an absolute carpet. I think the other one as well, a favourite of us on this show, maybe that will show their hand at some point as well. And I know bookies are saying it might be a 2-horse race, but I think they're forgetting about Plymouth Parkway, aren't they? Parkway, aren't they?
Well, I have them off. I have to tip Plymouth Parkway. Their miraculous rise has been unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, them and Peterborough Sports, you have to look at those two clubs there and hold them up as an example of what can happen to well-run non-league pyramid clubs in the pyramid, and how the structure can work if you work at it properly. And I don't know whether they will have to have a year or two stabilising in this at this level. I don't know, but they're my dark horses for this division, to be honest, David. And I think it'd be hard to look away from him. I know they only picked up a point on Saturday at home to Chesham, but they're a tough side to beat, Chesham. They've not made many changes, so they were pretty stable. Going back to Hanwell, aren't they known as the Geordies?
Yeah.
They're known as the Geordies, aren't they?
So I think, if I'm right in saying as well, they've got very famous fan as well in Peter Crouch.
Oh right, yeah.
He goes down there quite regularly, so he's around there. But I think one of the other ones I've noticed with some of these sort of signings as well was a great signing, and I'm just trying to see who it was who's done the signing. So I apologise, but it was someone's brought somebody in from a great club that I've never heard of before. I think it's Truro have actually brought them in. But what a fan! We talk about Plymouth Parkway being a great name, in Swindon Supermarine being another great name. But can we get any better than Mousehole?
Mousel. It's pronounced Mousel.
Do you know what I mean? You look at it, and go Mousehole. But you just look at that and think, what a great name. What a great name. Yeah. But I suppose one of the ones I'd like to talk about in this division as well would be the likes of Merthyr Town. I mean, after everything that happened with them, and during pre-season, I mean, do we think that they will manage to have a better season than last year?
I think so. They've got a good manager now in Paul Michael. Did a good job at Yate Town last season. Cinderford before that. So I think they'll do a lot better than last season, certainly. I don't know whether the geography affects them a little bit, because they're surrounded by teams in the Welsh Premier League, and the lure of Europe as they do in that division. To me, it's a little bit strange because most of them last one game, don't they? Most in that European competitions, but it's I suppose it's some sort of a lure. But they have to fight hard because, as I say, they've got a lot of clubs in those Welsh leagues around them, fighting for the same sort of players. So they have to try and bring a lot of players over the bridge from the Bristol area, Gloucestershire area, and I think that's why they've gone for Paul Michael, because he's got the contacts around that area as well.
And you look at some of the people that Tiverton have brought in, and And you look at some of them and you think, wow, that's a bit of a journey. You know, they brought in Jamie Richards from Truro and Niall Thompson from Truro, and you think, wow. Do you know what I mean? That's a bit of a journey, isn't it? From down there, you know, be playing Truro one season and playing in Somerset the next.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, you think, don't you? Think, well, they're West Country sides, they're not far away, but they're actually about 2 hours apart, you know. But I think that certainly in Niall Thompson's case, he's an ex-Tiverton player, so I don't whether he lives up sort of halfway, I don't know, but yeah, Scott Rogers has made some decent signings. Actually, I think they'll do a lot better than they did last year.
I think the other one as well, Steve, is you know, you look at the favourites for relegation this year, and I can't disagree more. You know, the favourites are 66-1 to go down is Northley.
Yeah.
You know, and Eddie, with the manager of Northley, with the contacts he's got from Oxford United, and of course working at Oxford United now as well. You know, I mean, dear me, I'd like to see what the odds are to actually see them stand up, because I think it might be worth a few quid, to be honest with you. I see Northley finishing mid-table, comfortably.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't think they'll struggle. It's difficult to say because they are. Let's face it, they are a very small club in terms of, you know, it's a little village, you know, in Oxfordshire, and it's a big step for them. But he's a good manager, and like you say, he's got a lot of contacts at Oxford. Whatever, he's working back at Oxford, I think, isn't he?
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't disagree that they'd stay up. I fear a little bit for one or two teams, Hartley, Whitney, maybe. I don't know about Winchester City. So, yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I think Northley could survive.
I mean, you know, coming out of that division and going into the, you know, into the Division 1 Central, you know, I'm looking at some of these ones, and the ones that I want to pick out, because I know he's had, you know, speaking to him quite regularly, and after the massive disappointment for him, you know, last year in Paul Halsey at Ware, and you know, he had, you know, the game was probably one of the best playoff finals I think I've ever seen, goals wise, and what happened right at the very end of the game. I was listening to it live, you know, on the radio at the time, but he's brought in some great players. He's brought in Richard Bryan from Detroit City in the USA, Fred Burbridge from Hendon, Rennie Howe, which of course the big one from Bedford Town, Shaquille Ismail from Colney Heath, Jarvis Monk from Stansted. But the one that sort of, I think, slipped under the radar, and I must admit, I speak to him almost every week, and I didn't realise he'd signed this player, but this guy's got goals in him all over the place, and that's Jordan Watson from Welling Garden City. I've seen him playing for Averley in Isthmian North a few years ago, and this guy's got some firepower, so it'll be very, very interesting. And he scored a lot of goals last year for Welling Garden City as well. So I think, you know, I think they could be with a chance of you know, being up there again this year.
Yeah, I think they will be. Be hard to go against them. My personal favourites would be Biggleswade Town, not because I know Robbie O'Keefe and he's a friend of mine. I'm setting that aside. I mean, my club, Rawnstown, we actually played them in pre-season, and he's got a very, very good young team. He's relied quite a lot on his Stevenage connections from when he was academy manager there. A lot of his players are ex-Stevenage players, but he's also brought in 3 experienced players in John Clements, who was a striker who's been around the block. He's been around that area for a long time, scoring a lot of goals with Welling Garden City and FC Romania and clubs like that. Lee Close and Dave Keenley's side, who used to play for St Albans a few years back. So he's got a good mix of experience and youth. So I quite fancy Robbie's team to do well and go straight back up this year.
He's brought in, you know, he's brought in a fair old few. He's brought in a full first 11 almost, and 2 subs. He's brought in 13. So he's definitely got them in there and got them, you know, very well prepared. I mean, we look down the list, and of course, and you know, Harlow, a club close to me, they've lost their star man in Alex Reed. Struggled to bring a few in. I know they've had a few issues with trying to get people to travel the distance, etc. So, they finished 10 points off the top 5 last year. So they brought in some experience into the team as well. Brand new pitch as well. Do you think that might cause a few issues as well? They've literally got a brand new pitch. First game is going to be on Saturday against Dunstable, and they've not played on it yet. Do you think that could
be a big issue, Dave? Yeah, it could be. But Danny Chapman's made quite a few signings. I mean, he's brought in a few. But I would be interested to know. Berkhamsted are another side, I think, who will be there or thereabouts. I know they're quite fancy to do well. I mean, they came close last year, but they've made they've signed 4 good players from Tame United, including Ryan Blake, who scored a load of goals for them last year. And they've probably made what I would call probably the coup signing of the summer in this division in Jake Howells, the ex-Luton Town player. Now, that is a good signing for this level. Cirencester Town have been switched from the Division 1 South. Now, they did well. They got to the playoffs in Division 1 South last season, so they would be expected to do well this year. Same with AFC Dunstable. And I quite fancy my mate Terry Spillane's lot at Walthamstow to do okay.
Yeah, I don't think you ever get to a situation with young Terry, who I've got so much time for. I think he's a fantastic manager, fantastic man. As you say, I just don't see that you can ever discount Terry Spillane. Yeah, he's had a very, very disappointing. Even John Mackey, who again is a fantastic football man. The two of them together.
Yeah,
I know they lost 2-1 to Buckersfield in the FA Cup on Saturday, but I think once he gets them rolling, you want to play Walthamstow very early. I think.
Yeah.
If you don't, once he gets his feet and finds out how he's going on, Terry Spillane and John Mackey will have that team rolling. And I know a lot of people have said, "Oh, they're going to struggle this year." I don't think they know Terry Spillane or John Mackey. They don't struggle. Do you know?
No. There was some strange results on Saturday in the FA Cup extra preliminary round but I think a lot of it is just the fact it's just so early, and teams have got players still away on holiday or whatever, and it's too early. It just comes too early for some clubs, and I think that was probably. I mean that Buckhurst Hill result was probably one of the shock results of the day, but I just think it came too early. I wouldn't hold much truck with it. I don't think there was. I think they'll be there or thereabouts.
So who's your if you got your money out and you're whacking it down? Who's your money on for that for the South?
For the South,
so the Central.
Central. As I say, Biggleswade would be my tip.
Yeah.
Or else Robbie O'Keefe will be on my tail if I don't. So, but yeah, and just a quick tip or link for Biggleswade Town as well. They're hosting Juventus under-16s against Tottenham Hotspur under-16s at their ground week after next. Next Wednesday. First ever international match at their ground. So that'd be quite a good one to go and have a look at. I think I might even journey down there myself.
Yeah, no, why not? So if we go into into the final division, the South Division, where's your feelings on the South Division?
I think because of the number of players that he's brought in, I would struggle to look too far other than relegated Wimbledon Town. Although they got relegated, the club stuck with James Stokoe and is undertaking something of an overhaul of his squad. But he's brought in some interesting signings, especially the experienced Luke Burbage and Jordan Rose, who's I think I've lost count the number of clubs he's played for, but he's been around the block. Good, experienced head. I would also expect Frome Town to be up there. They finished runners up to Plymouth Parkway last year. Along with the Hampshire pair of AFC Tottenham and Sholing, with the Stags now possessing the vastly experienced Scott Rendell up top. Played a lot of years in the National League with Aldershot, etc. And from what I can see in pre-season, he's been scoring a few goals, 1 or 2 penalties, but been scoring a few goals for him. So I would expect those two to be up there. Be interested as well, because there's a lot of new teams in this division. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Mousel up there in a couple of years' time, but to follow the likes of Tavistock and Exmouth Town, who've joined in from the Western League. Unknown quantities, both of them, really.
And of course, it's the other one that sort of, again, name-wise, and I keep talking about names and how good names are. Is it? And again, I might pronounce this one wrong, so I apologise to them if they do. Hamworthy United.
Yeah. They've been a good Wessex League club for a number of years. Always done well in the Vars. Be interested to see how they go. Bashley have come back. They had 4 or 5 seasons out of the league, but they're a bit like Northley in the sense that they're a village club that seem to do well, punch above their weight.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see how they go.
Manor Farm.
Yeah, you'd have to put them up there and up amongst it. Bishop's Cleeve, they're back in after a few years out. Another very well-run club, Bishop's Cleeve. Westbury United, that would be an interesting one, because they've sort of come from nowhere almost to get into step 4. So be interested to see how they go. Maybe a step too far, but I look at Colney Heath and how they did last season, and they struggled right from word go, and they were virtually almost expected themselves to struggle, didn't they?
Yeah.
And I think that's a bit the same with Westbury. I don't know, but I think they've sort of surprised themselves by being where they are now. But good luck to them. Let's see how they do. But I can't see much beyond Wimborne Town. Well supported, got a lot of good, got a lovely ground now. That new Cuthbury. I think they'll be thereabouts.
So, I mean, if we just have a quick look, and then we'll just quickly run through before we finish. We'll just have a look through at the games for this weekend, and we start off with let's go into the Premier Central. So the games this weekend are Bashford United versus AFC Rushden the Diamonds, Bedford Town versus Barwell, Colville Town versus Alvechurch, Terry's Hitchin Town, who had a good win at the weekend against Rushall Olympic, Ilkeston Town versus Leiston or Leiston, Micklehove Sports against Hensford Town, Needham Market versus Bromsgrove Sporting, Nuneaton Borough versus Royston, Redditch United versus Kings Langley. And I must say, Redditch United, their chairman, superb man, the chairman at Redditch. St Ives versus Stratford Town, and Stourbridge against Tamworth. In the Premier South, the games this week are Beaconsfield Town versus Plymouth Parkway, Chesham United versus Hartley Whitney, Harrow Borough versus Winchester City, Hayes and Yedding versus Salisbury, Merthyr Town versus Bracknell Town. That's going to be a tough one for Merthyr, I think, but it's their first home game. Northfleet, the same for them, a first home game against Met Police, who will be on a massive high after beating Hayes and Yedding. Hayes and Yedding, so where are we? Lost where we are now. So Paul Town versus Tiverton Town, Swindon Supermarine versus Hendon, Truro versus Dorchester Town, Western Supermare versus Gosport Borough, and Yate Town versus Hanwell Town. And in the Central Division, in the opening day there, it's Barton Rovers versus AFC Dunstable, Berkhamsted versus Biggleswade, Biggleswade Town versus Cirencester, Apologies because I got it wrong. So it's Harlow Town versus Aylesbury United, Hertford Town versus Didcot Town, Highworth Town versus Hadley, Kidlington versus FC Romania, Tame United versus Ware, which I think is probably the biggest game maybe at the weekend in that division. Waltham Abbey against Kempston Rovers, and Welwyn Garden City against the Superman in Walthamstow and Terry Spillane. And then in the South Division, their first fixtures are up this weekend. AFC Totton versus Bishop's Cleeve, Bashley versus Bristol Manor Farm, Bayern Bidford versus Hamworthy United, Frome Town versus Evesham United, Larkhall Athletic versus Tavistock, Melscombe Town versus Exmouth Town, Paulton Rovers versus Lymington Town, Slimbridge versus Sholing, Willen Rovers versus Westbury United, and Wimborne Town versus Cinderford Town. I mean, if there's one game you could go to at the weekend, mate, which one would you go to? You know, across the
Southbridge against Tamworth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big crowd that will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Listen, mate, a massive thank you for everybody for watching today. And we'll be back shortly. And of course, to yourself, mate, all the very, very best with what's to come. We wish you all the very, very best for the end of this week. And keep your pecker up. We're all thinking of you, and we wish you all the very, very best with the rest of the week. And we'll be back very, very soon. Thank you for watching. Until next time, from me, from Steve. Good night.
Bye.